Hey, you want to make one of these? Here's a tutorial. For the base, I use 1-inch foam. Measure all the way around your head, then add like 5 more inches. Then measure from the bottom of your chin to the top of your head. For me, it's usually around a foot, then I just work from there. Cat. Now cut it out of foam. Then hot glue the two ends together. Now you have a tube. Measure the inside of the tube and find the halfway point. Now measure that halfway point all the way around the side. Now you should have a line. Now measure equal distant marks around the line. I try to aim for 10 spaces. Now find the midpoint between those two marks, mark it at the top, and make a triangle. Do that along the entire thing. Yay, triangles! Now cut off the top ones. It should look kinda like a crown, then glue the triangles together. When you do this, make sure the tip of each triangle lines up with the other at the top. Now you have this. Put it on and make sure the top is all the way on top of your head. Then mark where your eyes, nose, and chin are. Then draw small circles for the eyes and a triangle for the mouth. Something like this. There should be 1 inch to 2 inches on the bottom. If there's not enough or too much, just trim or add. I also start the triangle above where I marked the nose. Then cut it out. I also save any big scraps to use for later. Now we can start on the snout. Draw the snout shape on paper. Hold it up to the head to make sure it looks right. Depending on what you're making, it'll look different. Cut 2 out of 2-inch foam, then glue them together. Then start carving the edges. Keep in mind what angle you're cutting at to get the shape you want. I start by cutting around the edge. And then I smooth down the top and bottom edge. Once it's carved into the start of your shape, take a piece of paper and mark out the flat part of the piece. Then cut it out of foam, and glue it on. I use those scrap pieces from earlier. Then carve the sides down. Part 2. Carve it into the shape you want, then mark out the inside of the mouth. Like this. Then we can add the nose. This character is a cat, so the nose will look like this. Cut it out of foam, then carve it into shape. Then carve out the mouth. The more carved out the inside is, the better the ventilation. Then glue it to the base. Once that's on, we can make the jaw. Get a piece of paper and draw out the jaw shape. Then cut it out of foam. Then mark out the inside of the jaw, then carve it down a little. Then carve down the edges. I also slope down the back. Then glue it on. Now trace where the eyes go on the head. My eyes I got from Etsy. Then draw the cheek shape. It should look something like this. This part should be right where the eye is, and the smile should be as big as you want. I also add this line. Cut it out of foam. Make sure you add the line that separates the top jaw and bottom jaw. First I cut a diagonal slit along the line. You want the bottom piece to be lower than the top. You want to go from the bottom left corner to the top right, and cut along that line. And you want to carve down the edges. Carve it into whatever shape you're wanting. Once you have that, you can glue it on. I start by gluing it to the snout. Then get a piece like this for the nose bridge, and carve it into shape. Then carve away the extra foam in the mouth. Now we can make the eyebrow piece. Trace out the eye shape, and then make the eyebrow piece around it. Like this. Then carve them into shape. Glue them on, then cut out the eye holes. Then you can carve out the inside. Put it on a few times to make sure it fits right. Part 3. Draw the shape of the ear. Hold it up to the head to make sure it's the shape you want. Also, if you want, draw these side pieces. Cut them out of foam, then cut out these side pieces. Cut them out of foam, then carve down the edges. Once they're carved, glue them to the ear. Then carve down all the edges. Then glue them to the head. Then you want to take a strip of fabric and glue it to the base of the ear. I'm trying something different for this head, but it should usually look like this. If your character has cheek fluff, cut out a shape like this. Cut them out of foam, carve them into shape, then glue them on. Now make sure the eyes fit nicely in the head. If they need to be carved out more, do that. But don't glue the eyes in yet. Also smooth down this back edge. Now start taping the inside for the lining. Make sure you tape the eye and the inside of the mouth. Then mark out all of the pieces. Cut them out, then cut them out of fabric. I'm using a breathable lycra fabric. Then sew them all together. When doing the mouth pattern, the part that connects to the lining, prioritize keeping that flat. The rest can just be pushed down. Now when cutting out the mouth fabric, cut out a lot more than you need. You can trim this back later. Then sew all the pieces together. Then start gluing the lining in. This is a long process. Part 4. Once you have all the lining glued in, if you're doing teeth, don't glue in the mouth lining all the way. Draw out the teeth shape, then cut it out of fabric. Then sew them together. Sew them, turn them inside out, then stuff them. Then hand sew the top closed. Cut a slit where the teeth go and glue them in. Then mark out where the teeth go, cut a hole, and push the teeth through. Then glue down all the edges. Now for the eyes. I have them drawn out, then sized properly onto paper. I tape my buckram to paper, then I run it through my printer. Make sure you paint the back of the buckram black. Also, I used a Sharpie for that. You can also paint them, but I like doing it this way. Then glue them to the eye blanks. Then glue them onto the head. Make sure you put it on a few times to make sure it fits right. And if you have any overhang on the sides, just add pieces of foam to smooth it out. Then glue on some fabric for the nose. Now you can start taping the head. If your pattern is symmetrical, you can just tape half. Now draw on all the patterns. Then mark any big pieces into sections that will lay flat. Then mark the color, number, and fur direction of each piece. Cut them out, then trace them onto fur. Shave the pieces that need to be shaved, cut them out, then sew them together. Part 5. When sewing the fur together, I do it in 4 different pieces. The face, ears, back of the head, and cheek fluff. Cat. When I do the ears, I don't sew them together all the way, so they're easier to glue onto the base. Once it's all sewn, you can start gluing it to the head. Also, I hand sew all of the front of the face, because it just looks better for me. Once it's all glued on, you can start ladder stitching everything together. Also, when ladder stitching, I like to use upholstery thread because it won't break when I pull it. Once it's all sewn, we can trim around the eyes. Then trace out the lining of the eye. Then cut them out of felt or fleece, then glue them on. You can also glue down a strip for the nose. Now we can work on the tongue. Draw what the tongue looks like on paper. Then cut it out of fabric and sew it together. Turn it inside out and sew any additional details. I'm using magnets, so I just glue them in. Then hand sew the top closed. Now we can finish it off with the neck. I put it on my headstand, then wrap some batting around it so it's not as tight. Then I wrap some cling wrap around it. Then duct tape it. Then mark your pattern and section it into pieces. Then cut them out. Cut them out of fur, then sew them together. Then you can sew it to the head. Make sure you sew it to the fur and the lining. Now for the hair tuft. Draw out the hair shape. I'm using magnets, so I'll need a bottom piece too. Sew it together, but leave a space open so you can pull it inside out. Glue on a magnet if you're using one, pull it inside out, then stuff it. Ladder stitch the hole closed. And if you're not using magnets, you can just ladder stitch it on. And you're done.
何？お暇なら私と遊んでくれない？はい。副会長ですよ。
Hey guys, since you were asking, I thought I'd show you how I line my heads. So, first up, you got your head base, and you want to tape the inside. I only tape half, because I can get it symmetrical, and it's just easier that way. So you want to do that on the inside of your head base, and then you want to put it on your mannequin with the tape inside, and cling film, and then tape that so you have the entire neck pattern as well. just like that. And you can see I've drawn where I'm going to cut all the different pieces out. So you want the muzzle and the eyes as separate pieces. And then you can just cut those out, transfer them onto paper so they're not sticky. And then once all the pieces are cut out, you'll then cut them into their materials. And then once all that's sewn together, I like to pin it in place just to check it fits. And as you can see, it fits pretty nicely, no wrinkles. At this stage, I like to do my teeth before I glue the lining in. So I patterned up the teeth that I want to put in like that just to check the size and shape. And then I'll trace that out onto neoprene, sew around them like that. Oh, I just want to show you the pens that I use. They're heat erasable. I just thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, you have no ink bleeding through on any of the suits. So then all the teeth have been stuffed now and sewn up. I'll just pin them into the head to make sure I like them and they're all in the right places. And then I'll basically repeat that step, but with the mouth lining untucked. And then I'll hot glue all the teeth down like that, so they're all secure. And then it'll be time to start gluing the lining in. I like to start around the eyes to anchor them in, and then around the mouth, and then you just kind of slowly go around the whole head and gluing it in bit by bit, making sure it's smooth and no wrinkles in there. And then as I'm gluing the muzzle lining, I'll cut holes for the teeth as I go. So just kind of eyeball it so the teeth can poke through. And then I'll ladder stitch around each tooth just so there's no foam showing, like that. Oh, and I've also sewed in some Velcro for the tongue. That's optional. You can just sew or glue your tongue straight in. That's pretty much it. It takes a lot of practice. It's taken me 4 years to get lining this clean. But just keep at it, and I'm sure you'll have a nice, neat suit. Okay, let's go. Here is part 1 of a 2-part series on how to fur a fursuit ear. Okay, so here it is I'm working on. Just go ahead and slap some duct tape on, make it look pretty. Ignore all the scribbly lines, I was just seeing what the client wanted. But here is the one that I'm actually using. Here's 2 little doodles I sent to the client to see which one he rather, and he went for the fluffy one. I'm so happy. Anyway, cut the duct tape off and get the pattern ready, and then put it on fur. I usually just use minky for in areas, but this time I'm using both. The black bit is some minky, as you can see. Here they are all sewn up. I used some interfacing on the minky to make it easier to sew together. And here it is, just making sure it fits on the ear before we carry on. Let me know if you want a part 2 on how to fur the rest of the ears. Okay, so welcome to part 2 of how to fur a fursuit ear. So first things first is I cut down the sides. This is where the seam of the fur will go. So the front bit is one bit, and the back bit is another bit. And here I am sorting out the back bit. So as you can see, I've added a bit more foam to give some shape to the back of the ear. And because it's more rounded, it just needs to sort of be cut off and then sewn back on to maintain the rounded shape. Please be careful of sharp things. Bleep, bloop, bloop. So these ears are just one color, so it makes it a lot easier. So here I am just cutting up where I need to cut. So the front of the ear, it just makes sense to be in multiple pieces because it saves fur. Also, I'll show you that later. But right now, this bit that I'm cutting out is the long bit of fur that I like the little ear tuft on the side. And I'm making sure it matches on the back, because I forgot to do that while it was on the ear. Any part that doesn't lay completely flat, just cut a dart into it. I think that's what people call it. Oh, great. No, I don't even show the camera. That's awesome. Just sewing that together then makes a curve. Basically, that's an easy way of explaining it. There, I'm just marking up what direction the fur goes, which is super helpful. I had some good advice from people on my last video on what to use to mark black fur or fabric, but I don't have time to go out, so I'm going to skip this part so you don't have to watch me agonizingly mark up chalk. I do leave a tiny bit of a seam allowance on my ear, just thought I'd show you that quickly. And shaving time. I only shave the top bits and the bottom bits I leave long. So this is my new shaver that I got from Amazon, and it's great. It was only £20 as well, so yay. Just make sure everything fits and looks right before sewing, obviously. That would be good. Okay, get your needles. Oh, no, get your needle. So I am a big fan of hand sewing. I find it really relaxing, and I like to just sit there and hand sew. But right now we are using the machine, because it's just a tiny little area, and it's just easier and quicker. But here is my favorite part, just hand sewing in. I'm not very good at sewing curves on machines, so I tend to hand sew just anything with a curve in it. But you just go ahead and do whatever you feel more comfortable with. I've clipped them together to make sure they look good, and just checking the back as well. I will unclip these because this is not how I'm sewing them. Here is how I'm sewing them. These goddamn clips, at least 2 explode in my face. Okay, so finally time to get them on the head. I think they look great so far, so I'm just gonna prepare it on the head to make sure it fits. So I put some glue on the curve, and the curve of the seam sort of gets right in there and sits there, because there's no point in doing a curve in fur if you can't see it. And then, obviously, the rest of the fill stays still when I'm sewing it in, so that's a nice bonus. With the power of editing, that means you didn't have it there for like 5 minutes until it dries. Good for you guys. Again, really important to make sure everything fits, because we're about to sew in the front bit, and obviously because the back is glued, it'll be too late to really change anything if you start sewing things in. So, double check, triple check, quadruple check if you need to. So this next part, I was a huge idiot and forgot to press record to record me ladder stitching the furs together. So, I can do another video on that if you want, because I was silly and now I feel stupid. Okay, so here he is for his final look shave, just making everything look pretty. Again, these new shavers are awesome, very happy with. Okay, so here's the final look. I'm super happy with them. I hope it's been at least a little bit helpful to some people. Whatever tutorial you want next, just ask and I'll see what I can do. Thanks a bunch. See ya!
about to make a nub tail from someone with zero experience. Cut out her pattern. Label colors. Cut out your fabric pieces. I like to use an X-Acto. Stuff it how you want to. I recommend making a core like I am here. Sew it all together inside out and then flip it back. Then cover the exposed foam. Done. Hope you enjoy 3.
My simple trick to making neck patterning easier. It's a neck cuff of 1-inch foam and elastic to make it easy to remove. Applying this to the mannequin head before taping the neck pattern makes the final product fit over your head without a zipper. I like to pattern this after gluing the face fur, so I know what angle the head sits at when I wear it. It's a personal preference, but you can pattern it all at once if that works better for you.
The ladder stitch is one of the most important stitches you need to know when you're fursuit making. It involves sewing straight stitches between 2 alternating pieces of fabric to sew them together. It's used when you can't access the backing of the fabric. For example, here I am sewing a nose onto this fursuit head. Generally, I will use a curved needle while I'm ladder stitching, however the straight needle seemed more appropriate to this situation. It is quite a tricky stitch to do, and I will admit I do go out of my way to avoid it. It does take a long time to actually do the stitch as well, but once I learned how to do it, the quality of my work improved drastically.
Do you want to know how to make a cheek fluff that naturally wants to stay fluffy? First, draw out your cheek fluff pattern. Trace a line, splitting it in half. Draw the fur direction. I want the front piece to be facing backwards and the back piece to be facing forwards. Make some register lines so you know where the pattern lines up with each other. Cut it out. Add some baby powder to the back so it's not sticky. Trace your pattern and cut it out. When you trace it, it's flipped, so then the shiny side is down. Now sew it together using the blanket stitch. And there you have it. Your fur now flows against each other to have that natural fluff.
Situations bring you back to me. Oh, love is never break off. I guess you won't, that's all. Oh my love, you say that I'm dying to forget. I bit the bullet for you, for you. I wrote a song to many pennies, so I hope you hear me know that I've been thinking about you. Oh.
Here's how I make my kimono head bases. I start off by drawing the eyes and mouth onto the base, then I trace out some shapes for the muzzle, cut them out and glue them together. Once the glue's all dried, I mark where I'm going to carve the foam, and this part makes a bit of a mess, but it's okay. I then line up the muzzle with the top of the mouth that I traced on and glue it down onto the base. Then I form the rest of the base around the muzzle. I also usually start with the bottom half of the base. I also cut the larger sections into smaller shapes as I just feel like this helps me blend the base together easier. I also just sketched the shapes onto paper before adding them on just to see if they look good. I ended up not adding a bridge for the muzzle, but here's what it looks like after I've added the forehead, and here's what it looks like after I've added the nose and some cheek tufts, and I ran out of hot glue sticks, so I'll make a part 2.